Namaste and welcome to Brahmanic Astrology channel. I'm your host Prasad Mahazani. Help you raise your vibrations and become your true self with the help of Vedic astrology. Please confirm if you are able to hear me properly and you are able to see me. Please comment. Can you please confirm if you're able to hear me properly? Just put in AV, audio, video, okay, into the comment box so that we can proceed. All good. Okay, great. All okay, great. So today we are going to talk about Saturn retrograde, which is going to happen this June 29 and would be there till November 15. Okay. And it's happening in the sign of Aquarius. So what is the meaning of the retrogression? Retrogression, we have already made separate videos on retrogression. Retrogression is the notional movement of the planets which appears to move backwards. It is called as retrogression because we see planets at the backdrop of some objects. it, we see some planets on the backdrop of nakshatra, on the backdrop of sun, and so on. So when they come close to earth, because of their closeness to the earth, our view changes and they appears to move backward because the reference point to those planets has been shifted. Okay, I've already made a separate video about it. You can go and watch that. Today we are going to talk about Saturn retrograde. Saturn retrograde into the sign of Aquarius. What is the sign of Aquarius? Aquarius is the sign ruled by Saturn itself. So Saturn is in its own sign and now it is moving backward in transit. This is not the planets in the chart, it's the transit. Right now, just Saturn is going to move backward into the Aquarius. So what are the effects of it? Okay. So what are the effects of Saturn into the sign of Aquarius? Saturn is extremely comfortable into the sign of Aquarius because it is his own sign and it resonates well with Aquarian intelligence, humanitarian attitude, and all kinds of things. Air element. Saturn loves the air element. That's why Saturn does great into the sign of Gemini. It gets exalted into the sign of Libra, and it does great into the sign of Aquarius. Capricorn is also ruled by Saturn, but again, it's a different story altogether because it's earth element sign and is ruled by Saturn. Okay, but Aquarius is the sign of justice as well. Air element signs stand for other people. They like to support other people. Okay, and Saturn is the planet of justice. The planet of justice comes into the sign which is about humanitarian and social justice. Libra and Aquarius are kind of a social justice, or people who protest or stand for some social cause. All these things can be seen with Aquarius. And now Saturn comes in here. Saturn is the planet which is the ruler and the judge of your karma. Is also the planet which is responsible for your work. Saturn also represents your subordinates. And Saturn is the planet which brings in restrictions in your life. So Saturn restricts you in certain areas and makes you feel short of something. Scarcity is also one of the important trait of Saturn. Now, all this is happening in the sign of Aquarius. We talked about what is Saturn. We talked about what is Aquarian Saturn would look like, and now we also talked about the retrogression. Okay, but now we have to see how it will behave in all the ascendants. Okay, well, let's get started. Now, what I'm doing is I'm casting the chart for the right now. Let me just cast the chart for the right now, and then let me present this. Share screen, Windows, and here we are. So let me just close one of this chart. Okay, so this one I would close, and this one, yeah, is the chart for the right now. Now let's talk about the Aries Ascendant first. How this retrogression of Saturn is going to affect the Aries sign. Okay, Venkateshji, we are going to take the questions. Let me first cover all the ascendant. Last time we forget the Sagittarius Ascendant, and I had to make a separate video about it. But let's not, but not this time. Let's do it. And okay, so let's do this. So now, for Aries Ascendant, Saturn is ruling the 10th and the 11th sign, and is getting retrograde into the 11th house. 11th house is the house of gains. 11th house is also the house of 11th house is also the house of friends, and it is one of the wealth giving houses, the planet of efforts, the planet of work, the planet of discipline, continuous efforts, planet of success comes into the house of gains. And you have to always study Aries Ascendant. I always tell all my students to study Aries Ascendant all the time, because why Saturn is ruling the 11th house. We oftentimes see that Saturn is a planet which is responsible for negativity, scarcity, and all kinds of restrictions and mm, challenging things in life or negativity in life. But this is ruling the 11th house, because 11th house is the ultimate distraction from the 12th house of enlightenment. So Saturn is the ultimate gain before one gets into the final destination. Okay, and you would also see that this 11th house is 12th to the 12th. So 11th house is like a loss to the house of loss, which is the house of gains. Okay, and now what happens when you have a planet which is coming in here? Okay, let's discuss that. Okay. So you do audio wasn't there, right? Okay. So let me tell you again. Okay. So this is happening in the 11th house, and 11th house is the house of gains and is the house of elder brothers as well. And Saturn is the planet of restriction. So what happens when Saturn goes into retrogression is these people become, they shy away from the friends. They don't like to connect with their friends. They have very little friends, but they have sincere friends. Saturn shows reality. Okay, so in a way, this is a very good placement, but it restricts your social circles. And what is the reason for this restriction? The restriction for this might be your work, might be your association with a spiritual group. That is what 11th house is. And when Saturn comes in here, it restricts you. Okay, so and these people, when Saturn retrogression is in the 11th house, these people have the these people have the um, these people want other people to connect with them, but they have a hesitation. But at the same time, they want to listen good things about themselves when Saturn is placed into here. Okay, so all considering all this, what we are considering, the placement of Saturn in the 11th house in the sign of Aquarius, and that is retrogression. So these are the things. And what are the houses ruled by this? One more thing you have to see is what other planets are doing. Where is Rahu placed in? Where is Jupiter placed in? Because Jupiter is going to nullify or bring in a double effect into the chart. Okay, I have oftentimes observed that whenever there is a focal point, like two or more planets are aspecting a single sign or single house, then it becomes important. Let's see if we have anything. No, we don't. Oh, yes, we have. So if you look at Scorpio, Scorpio is aspected by the 10th aspect of the Saturn and is aspected by so many planets. Is aspected by Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, Venus, all these things. Okay. So Scorpio is the focal point. So if you have any important planets placed in the sign of Scorpio, so let me repeat it for you. The planet where, okay, let me tell you what is focal point. Focal point is when two or more planets are aspecting the same house or sign. In this, in if you cast the chart for the right now, in the sign of Scorpio, Saturn is aspecting with its 10th aspect from the Aquarius sign, and Jupiter is aspecting from the sign of Taurus to the sign of Scorpio. Sun, Venus, and two other planets are also aspecting, are going through the sign of Taurus and are aspecting the sign of uh, Scorpio. So Scorpio is the focal point for this. So now maybe you are having your sun in the Scorpio. Then these two planets are aspecting it. Let's say you have your Darakaraka placed into the sign of Scorpio. Your ascendant is Scorpio. All these things are going to bring in specific, positive, intense results for you. So Scorpio sign is the key for this Saturn and Jupiter double transit, and specifically for Aquarius sign. For Aries Ascendant, this for Aries Ascendant, this Scorpio is coming into the eighth sign, into the eighth house, which is the house of occult, mysticism, and all the hidden things. It is also the house which supports your marriage, that is resources of your partners, can also be seen with this. And now this house is under the focus of Jupiter and Saturn. And always remember, there has to be a confirmation of Jupiter and Saturn before you have something coming in your life. For example, let's say you're going to get married, a new person is coming, right? You have to have the confirmation of Saturn and Jupiter. Let's say you're going to have kids, so that's a newborn, it's a new jiva. So you need to have a confirmation of Jupiter and Saturn, and so on. So for all the ascendants from now, Taurus, be it any ascendant, wherever Scorpio is, keep an eye about what that house signifies, and that house is going to brighten up. That house is going to come into focus for those people having those ascendant and moon sign. Okay, let's say you have Aries ascendant, Aries moon sign. You're going to have a focus on the eighth house things. Okay, now let's make it Taurus ascendant. So we talked about Aries ascendant and we see which houses are ruled by Saturn. If you look at this chart, Saturn is ruling the ninth house as well as the 10th house, which makes Saturn Yogakaraka planet for Taurus ascendant. And now this Taurus sign, this sign is getting retrograde into the 10th house. 10th house is the house of your visibility. What is visibility? Visibility is nothing but everybody can see you. That's what fame is. So 10th house is the house which shows your visibility, your fame, your authority, and your social status. All these things can be seen with the 10th house. And now it has the Saturn in Aquarius retrograde. Saturn is the planet of fear. Okay, but this fear, we should not be afraid of this fear. Sounds weird, but that's what it is, because this fear makes you work towards certain things to avoid it, and in that process makes you successful. And that's why I always say that Saturn is the planet of success. Saturn is the planet which brings in money as a byproduct of the disciplined continuous efforts. Okay, so for Taurus ascendant, this Saturn is going to bring in a lot of changes into their career, but at the same time you will be afraid to make any changes into your work area. For example, you might be offered a new role in your work, but you would be afraid whether you would be able to do it or not. And this fear is because of this Saturn. But you have to understand that this Saturn is going to help you to be in all the positions in your work area. Like it would make you go to the lowest rank in your profession and experience the work. For example, if I'm making something, I have to be the last person who is working on the ground, and that's what Saturn is. Okay, now let's look at where the Scorpio sign is. Scorpio sign is into the seventh house, which makes it relationship. The focus of Taurus moon, Taurus ascendant people would be on relationships, business, social status. Seventh house is also about the travel. What? I never heard that. Yes, seventh house is also about the endings. is also about the death. Why? Because first house is the sunrise and seventh house is the sunset. So it's the end of the journey. Seventh house is also the house of foreign land, foreign things. Okay, all these things would be in focus for Taurus Ascendant, Taurus Moon people. But don't be afraid to take new responsibility in your work area. This is your time. Okay, let's move on to the third lagna, which is Sagittarius, not Sagittarius, the Gemini. And where do you see Saturn? Saturn here is going into the ninth house. Ninth house is the house of your higher beliefs. And you would see that higher belief, the house of higher beliefs, is right next to, right opposite, not next, right opposite to the house of efforts. Third house is the house of effort. And ninth house is the house of your higher beliefs. So this Saturn makes you, you know, take an action towards the things you believe in. But Saturn is not optimistic about it. And being retrograde makes it even more difficult for this Saturn to believe in certain things before they follow it. So this Saturn is more interested into understanding the higher purpose of the life, the true meaning of the life, not just making money, start a family, and die. This Saturn wants to understand the deeper meanings of the self. What is my purpose? Why I'm here on the earth? What I'm doing here? And why I was born and what I'm doing? And all these fundamental questions which a seeker asks. And that's what the Saturn retrograde does into the ninth house. Ninth house, Saturn always questions the belief system because Saturn is a planet which doesn't believe anything because he's suspicious. He doesn't distrust, and uh, analytical skill and intelligence is one of the key signification of the Saturn. So this Saturn doesn't easily believe in anything else. Oh, so there is something beyond this life? No, I don't believe that. Then he tries to follow it, and then he stumble upon someone, some guru, some guide, some philosopher, some person who makes sense to him, but he's continuously making an effort to understand these things. And that's what this Saturn in the ninth house does. This Saturn also aspects the sixth house, and which is our focal point for the Gemini sign. The the focus of the Gemini people would be on the sixth house. What is the sixth house? Oh, it's Dushtana. My life is going to be terrible. No. Sixth house, Saturn is the karaka of the sixth house. Saturn loves sixth house. And when this Saturn aspects the sixth house, it takes care of it. Saturn is taking care of your enemies. Sixth house is also the house of enemies. Sixth house is also the house of your self effort. The continuous daily routine can also be seen with the sixth house. Sixth house is 12th to the 7th. Seventh house is the house of relationship, and 12th to it is the sixth house of divorce, arguments, delays, diseases, and all those things. And when Saturn aspects this from the ninth house, it kind of restricts all these things. It restricts the dates, it restricts arguments, and it helps build a great bond with your partner. It doesn't allow to separate. It makes you work towards your relationship. It makes it it makes you work towards investing into your relationship rather than just separating from your relationship. Okay, that's what it does in the sign of Aquarius for the Gemini Ascendant, Gemini Moon. Let's go to the next, which is Cancer. Now, if you look at this Cancer sign, the Saturn is ruling the seventh house originally and is ruling the eighth house. Now, the eighth lord is in the eighth house for these people. Okay. And when Saturn is in the eighth house, it's like the planet of darkness is going inside the house of darkness. Saturn loves darkness. Saturn is darkness. Saturn is cold and dark planet. Saturn just loves to deep dive into this dark eighth house things, the other realms. It likes to deep dive into occult and tantra and all kinds of eighth house things, reiki, pranic healing, and whatnot. But this Saturn is scientific. Saturn just doesn't believe in any magic. Saturn always believe in some kind of logic. Logic is more like a Mars, but Saturn wants the truth. Saturn wants to know the truth before he can believe. It's very difficult for Saturn to believe in it. Okay. Now this Saturn in Aquarius in the eighth house is retrograde. What does it mean? Retrogression of Saturn in the eighth house is aspecting the 10th house of your career. So it brings in certain kind of a fear, insecurity, and aloofness in your social circle and your work. So you want to be alone with yourself. You um, would like to know about what they want to do in life. Okay. And whenever it is a retrograde, always remember it's always rework, reorganize, restructure. And structure is the word goes well with Saturn. Saturn is the order in your life, is a structure in your life. Now this structure is aspecting the 10th house of your career. So what it does is this Saturn makes you reorganize and restructure your work ethics. And it makes you it makes you shy away from society. It makes you get into yourself. But don't be afraid of it. That's how it does. But it will make you work. You would always be busy. You would have something to do. Okay. So that's what this Saturn does. And this is the period when you would like to be in a jungle, be alone. 12th house is more like an isolation, but 8th house is like away from the people. And 8th house, it is a Dushtana house, but that's the house precisely where the seeds of your bhagya are. If you look at this chart, the ninth house is right after the death. Chart doesn't end in the eighth house. It starts. This is the isolation before the big breakthrough. So this Saturn does like to work in isolation about the projects which they want to follow in next few years. Okay, you may not even know what they are working right now. They are working few months, few years ahead of the time. Okay, so that's what it is. Now let's move on to the Leo. Leo is a sign And now Saturn is in the seventh house, and it goes into the Aquarius retrogression, and now it is going into the focal point is going into the fourth house. But here is the thing about seventh house Saturn. Seventh house Saturn, no matter what house, excuse me, no matter what. Okay, this is important. Saturn in the seventh house gets the directional strength, because in a natural, again, this is so important. If you look at the natural horoscope, the seventh house is ruled by Libra, which is the sign of exaltation for the Saturn. So no matter what sign is placed into the seventh house, in our case for Leo ascendant, Aquarius is the sign. Doesn't matter. Even if it is Aries, this Saturn would do great because it has the vibes of Libra, the seventh house, the original seventh house, and the directional strength. We always talk about Shadbala, six folded strength of a planet. This Saturn in the seventh house is very important planet, is the planet which gets the directional strength. But this seventh house is the house of long-term relationship. And when I say relationship, it may not always be romantic or husband wife relationship or marriage, but it is a long term commitment, be it business, be it marriage. It is nothing but a long term commitment. The planet of fear is coming into the long term commitment. So Leo ascendant people would be afraid to commit to any kind of a long term relationship during this period, during this, from June to November 15. Okay, this is very small window, but you can make a most out of this, and you should study the transit. I never believe and give much importance to transit, because for me, dasha is the most important part of your chart. Why? Because it is derived from nakshatra. Each one of us have different dashas going on. It is ruling certain houses, and then we have to add the dashas to exactly see the triggering of the event. I always use dasha as a triggering event rather than making concrete predictions. Concrete predictions can be made only through the Vimshottari Mahadasha, and combine it with Yogini Dasha, Kala Chakra Dasha, Narayani Dasha, or Chara Dasha. One live Dasha and one Parashari Vimshottari Dasha. This should be the combination. Okay. Now, we talked about the Leo, and the focal point is again the fourth house, which is the house of mother. And it also brings in a lot of responsibility towards the mother. Okay, the focal point is on the fourth house, that is home environment, mother, happiness, and sleep. The planet of work is aspecting the house of sleep, so be careful with your sleep. Make sure you are taking enough sleep, drinking enough water, keeping yourself hydrated, and so on. Just love yourself. Okay, now let's go to the Virgo. So for Virgo ascendant, Saturn is going into the sixth house, and where is the focal point? The focal point is in the third house of self effort. Third house is also the house of obstacles, and Saturn is aspecting this house. Saturn is aspecting this third house with the 10th house aspect. Okay. And it is going to bring in the sixth house energy along with the third house energy. Now, third and the sixth both are challenging houses. We don't really understand, but third house is also house which can delay things for you. Here's an exercise for you. What you have to do is look at the third house and the lord of the third house and see where it is going, and just analyze how you feel about that house. You will see that the house where the third lord is placed in is the house where you have to work on that area of your life. It makes you work towards that area of life. It doesn't come easy to you. Okay. Now, for this Virgo sign, the Saturn is coming into the sixth house. Yeah, sixth house is also, here is the thing about the sixth house. Sixth house is also about the daily routines, and Saturn loves routine. And at the same time, this Saturn is going to support you by bringing in organization, order into your day to day routine. It's not easy. You might adopt certain routine, you might adopt certain lifestyle, be it uh, lifestyle around your nutrition, or some workout, or some exercise, yoga. Some lifestyle changes will come into your life through self effort. This Saturn in Aquarius in the uh, sixth house is going to bring in some kind of a order into your lifestyle, and it also involves the third house of self effort. So Saturn loves effort, routine, order, organization. That's what is happening all around for these people. Okay, now let's look at the Libra. With Libra sign, Saturn is placed into the fifth house, is retrograde, is ruling the fourth and the fifth house, and the focal point now is in the second house. Second house is the focal point. So what it does is, if you look at the Libra ascendant, Saturn is also a planet which is a yoga karaka planet for this lagna, along with Taurus. It also does great for Libra, and you will see both these ascendants are ruled by the friend of Saturn, which is Venus. So Saturn does great when the ascendant lord is Saturn's friend Venus. So whenever it is in the um, it is we are analyzing it for his friend Venus, the Taurus ascendant and Libra ascendant, Saturn is doing great. Saturn helps his friend. Okay, now what happens when Saturn comes into the fifth house retrograde? Fifth house is not the house for Saturn. Saturn doesn't feel comfortable with this fifth house for certain things. What are those certain things? Fifth house is the house of romance, and Saturn is not a romantic planet. Saturn, Saturn is a kind of a person who would do all the duties towards his family, a wife, a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, friends, brothers, sisters. But we're talking about the fifth house, so I'm talking about the romantic relationship. But he would do all the responsibilities towards their loved ones, but they may not be able to do some romantic things. They may not be able to do anything romantic for their partner, and that's what they want, maybe their partners. But that's not comfortable for Saturn. So there are certain signification of the fifth house which resonates well with this Saturn. Saturn is the planet of intelligence. What? Yes. Saturn is an intelligent, scientific, analytical, wonderful planet. And now it is into the fifth house of education. So these people are disciplined towards their education, towards learning, because they have that sincere mindset to learn certain things because of this Saturn in the fifth house of education. So with romance, they are not interested. But when it comes to learning, when it comes to working, taking notes, writing it down, analyzing it, Saturn feels comfortable. Saturn loves it. And the focal point for this lagna is the second house of Scorpio. So the fifth lord and the fourth lord is aspecting the second house lord along with the Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, and Venus from the eighth house. So second house becomes powerful. Second house becomes the focus of these people during this double transit of Saturn, Jupiter, and especially during this Saturn retrograde planet. Okay. So what is the second house? Second house is the house of food, about the things which you value, about the resources, about your family. So now this Saturn will restrict the second house things. It will make you spend less, save more. It will keep check on everything around the second house. So second house is under the audit. So now whatever you do with respect to second house, Saturn is watching you. And in a way, this improves these houses. Second house is also about your friendships. Friends can also be seen with the second house. And second house is also about taking care of the things and about people who are dependent on you, can also be seen with the second house. And Saturn loves to take responsibility. Saturn is such a sincere, honest, and wonderful guy, I would say, who is always ready to do things beyond his normal routine. And even if it means it is going to hurt him, uh, it's not going to benefit him anyway, he would still do it. That's what Saturn is. Saturn is a planet which makes you go all out, go that extra mile for duty and service to others. And that's when he's happy. So with retrogression, it does makes it some unusual romantic relationships. With the Saturn in the fifth house retrograde, you will be afraid to love someone. You would be fearful to open your heart to someone. You would be afraid to believe in love. This Saturn in the fifth house also aspects the seventh house here, and wherein Mars, malefic Mars, is placed in. For right now, this is placed in, but most of the time, these things will, some planets will come into this. So for Libra people, this Saturn is auditing your relationships. You would find so many challenges with the relationships, but at the same time it will save you from the wrong ones, because you would be fearful to get into a relationship. Okay. But to it doesn't mean it will deny. Okay. I'm not here to tell you that whether you should get into a relationship or not. That is so karmic and so important. Even if it means like you're supposed to get into a worst relationship, you would get into that. Okay, and no one can stop you. That's what I feel, because you have to get through those wrong feelings to feel right about yourself before you feel right about yourself. Anyway, we'll talk about it in some other relationship videos, but now let's talk about the Scorpio Ascendant now. This is so important. Now, we are always talking about the focal point throughout this video, which is about Scorpio. So now yourself, your physical body is going to be the most important part and focus for Scorpio Ascendant people. So these people would start taking care of their body. They would start exercising. They would start nourishing their body, because this Jupiter is also aspecting the ascendant, and this Saturn is also aspecting the ascendant. This Saturn will bring in the discipline into your physical body. Means exercise, the literal use of the physical body to bring in change in your life. Okay, fourth house is also the house of the mother. So you, and it also means your um, home environment. So it's going to bring in uh, some attachment to your mother. Like you would feel you want to attachment towards your mother, but at the same time you feel the lack in the nourishment, because fourth house is also the house of nourishment. Okay, now it is also aspecting the Scorpio. Saturn is also aspecting, and Jupiter and all these four planets are also aspecting. Yeah, we talked about that. Let's move on to the Sagittarius. Sagittarius is so special for me because I always forget Sagittarius Ascendant. I don't know why, but I keep forgetting Sagittarius Ascendant. Now, the Saturn is going into the third house of self effort, and this is retrograde, is powerful, unusual. And now this Saturn is aspecting the fifth house of your romantic relationships. And at the same time, the Scorpio is going into the 12th house of spirituality. You know, the sign of Scorpio, which shows the eighth house things, occult and mysticism, is going into the 12th house of moksha, enlightenment, isolation, and things which are foreign to you, and is aspected by this self effort Saturn retrograde from the third house. Okay, so this period you would make an effort to get towards your spiritual goals, because Jupiter is also aspecting the 12th house, Saturn is also aspecting the 12th house, and guess what? Jupiter is ruling your Lagna. The Lagna Lord is aspecting the 12th Lord, not the 12th Lord, but the 12th house. And Saturn, which is the fifth house, is also aspecting the 12th house. Okay, so two of the self defining planets. The first house is also self, and fifth house is also your matured self version of yourself. 159 is a dharma trine, is a self trine, and fifth house is the second house of this dharma trine, and is aspecting the 12th house. So it brings in a lot of personal growth for you with the help of spirituality. Let's move on to the 10th house, Aquarius. Not Aquarius, the Capricorn. Now, the Saturn goes into the second house. Second house is the house of resources, food, speech, and all of that. And now it goes retrograde. What it shows is second house is also the house of comforts and luxuries, not luxuries, but the comforts which are provided to a newborn by their family. Okay, we are born in the first house ascendant, and the next house to our body is the nourishment which our family provides us when we are born. Okay, and not everyone gets it. Maybe there is some affliction, maybe some maleficent, and so on. But the house responsible for this is the second house. And now Saturn comes in here. Saturn is the lack of it, Saturn is the fear about it. Retrogression makes it powerful. So Saturn in the second house makes it feel the lack of nourishment for the person. And Saturn is also ruling the first house of physical body. The Lord of the first house goes into the second house of nourishment. So this shows you will be concerned about your nourishment, about what you eat. You would be concerned about what you are consuming. You would be conscious about it. Okay, it's very important. Now, the focal point is coming into the 11th house. Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, Venus is aspecting it from the fifth house. Saturn is aspecting it from the second house, and it is into the 11th house of gains. Second house is also about the value or addition or anything surplus or money or savings. All these things can be seen with this. And now the focus of these people would be on Scorpion things, the eighth house things, more so the house of gains. So you would have secret gains because of your efforts, and maybe something related to your speech, because second house is about your speech and is aspected by Jupiter, which is ruled by the 12th house. The lord of the 12th house is aspecting the 11th house, and the lord of the lagna is also aspecting the 11th house. But here, though it is 11th house, it is also having the energy of the 8th house because of Scorpio. Makes sense? And this is how this Saturn is going to make them work more and more for money. But at the same time, this is the time for personal growth as well, because self-defining factor of ascendant lord is going into the second house of value addition, about the things which you value. So this is going to appreciate what you believe in. Okay, so this is Capricorn. Now let's go back to Aquarius. This is so important because Saturn is coming into the first house, and Saturn is not comfortable into the first house. Why? Do you remember what we talked about the Libra Ascendant? Not Libra, the Leo Ascendant, where Saturn was in seventh house. We talked about no matter which sign placement is, the house placement is, because of the seventh house impact of the Saturn, it will give the results of Saturn in Libra, because it gets the directional strength, it gets the Shadbala, one of the Bala, one of the strength, which is about by which is due to the positioning of Saturn in the seventh house. Similarly, no matter which sign it is, Saturn is not comfortable into the first house. Why? Because it is Aries, which is the sign of debilitation for the Sun, for the Saturn, and it is also the sign of exaltation for Sun. Sun is all about the self, so that's why Sun gets exalted into the sign of Aries, and it does great into the first house. It makes you healthy and so on. But Saturn is not comfortable about the first house. Saturn doesn't like to focus on the self. Saturn likes to work for the other people who are underprivileged, those who are not fortunate enough, like you and me, or like anyone else. That's what this Saturn thinks. When the person with the Saturn in the first house gets praise for his self, he doesn't like it, because Saturn in the first house can also make you lazy, because the planet of work is coming into which is coming into this house of self. So this Saturn wants you to work on yourself, but this Saturn is not about the self. Saturn is always about the other people. Okay, so Saturn Aquarius retrograde in the first house, you have to be very careful about what you think about yourself during this time. Okay, now we are moving to the last lagna, which is Pisces. Let's see what it has to say. Now Saturn Aquarius is going into the 12th, and the focal point is going into the 9th. Okay, so now Saturn is aspecting from the 12th house, and Jupiter, which is the ruler of the first house, is aspecting this Scorpio and is aspected by this Saturn as well. Saturn rules 11th as well as the 12th house of this ascendant. And now it is going into the 12th house. 12th house is the house of spirituality, and it is also about the losses. It is also about losing yourself. That's what moksha is. Moksha is nothing but losing out. Just losing yourself is the key. But again, this Saturn is in the 11th sign of Labha, of Aquarius, into the 12th sign. So what it shows is these people have some gains from the foreign sources during this time. Okay, because ninth house is also the house of travel and bhagya and money. So these people have some gains from foreign lands. Okay, so yes, this was for all the ascendants. Now if you have any questions, please share it. Let me go through the comment section. In my chart, Saturn is retrograde in the ninth house of Capricorn. Okay. How retro Saturn effect in transit, even though retro in natal chart? Yes, we will cover this. Okay, those who are going through certain placements, we will also talk about it. Okay, yeah. Okay, so when you have these placement in your natal chart as well, it becomes like a Saturn return. So it becomes even bigger event for you. More than dasha, more than anything, it becomes a life-changing event for you. You should definitely focus on the houses ruled by Saturn and dasha and see what exactly you're going through. It might make you take a big decision in your life. I'm Scorpion Ascendant, Sun in Venus in 8th, Jupiter, Mercury in... Where is your Saturn? 7th house is in Scorpio sign, empty Taurus Ascendant. Okay, so check where Mars is. Leo Ascendant, Saturn in the 7th, and Venus Dasha. Yeah, great. So yes, if you have any questions, you can put them into the comment section. I read all the comments and I reply to all the comments. Okay, So keep watching Pramanik Astrology. And if you want to learn Vedic astrology step by step, join my 33 days Vedic astrology boot camp. Link is in the description. Sending you tons of positive energy, sending you high vibrations. See you in the next videos. Love and peace. Namaste.